Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of MGR Unplugged. We are pretty busy today with a lot of topics. A very busy week. David is with me, and he's been soaking on news on e-commerce specifically and things that happen in the e-commerce and podcasting news as well. So we have quite a few things to discuss, all interesting. We're going to try to stay away from the pandemic as much as possible. Not sure if that will be possible.
I said we have enough to talk about that we don't need to talk about coronavirus.
It may come up. It's
going to be hard not to.
It may come up.
The goal is not to talk about coronavirus.
I can't guarantee that we're not going to discuss that. We're going to discuss a little bit the consequences on the business side of that. But we want to try to be a little more forward thinking as far as like pretending that we're over the curve, if there's such a curve, and then just kind of moving forward. So let's get started right away.
None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down, hand over my crown, hand over my heart. I do this for my town, I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud, my time. None of you people can tell me to stop.
All right, welcome back, guys. David, so let's just get started right away. The first thing that we just learned, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, with Facebook news about Shop and the new coalition with different...
Shopify has been busy this week. They announced a ton of stuff.
Yes, both Shopify and Spotify, which we'll be discussing later.
Shopify, we'll talk about the Facebook thing first. And then the day after, yesterday, they had Shopify Unite. Well, they called it Reunite. There's normally their annual conference, but obviously there's no conferences this year. And they announced a bunch of stuff. Shopify is now a bank, as every successful company at some point in their lives becomes a bank. Shopify is now a bank too. Congratulations.
I'm not sure they're officially a bank, but they have their own credit.
They have banking and checking accounts.
Yes, I guess. Okay.
So business banking. Anyways,
like I started with
Facebook.
With the Facebook part, there is a little more coalition. I mean, it's actually a Facebook feature. And that applies also to Shopify as well as many other e-commerce platforms like WooCommerce.
So it was, okay, so to back up for a second. Basically, Facebook announced on Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday? Was it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday.
I think so, yeah.
That they're launching what's called Facebook Shops. And basically, it's going to be a shopping platform built directly into Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook Messenger, all of their suite of apps. And this has kind of been expected for a while.
Well, they had Marketplace before. And that was more of a...
It was in terms of exactly this. Like, It was expected that they would launch storefronts within their platforms. It wasn't necessarily... They kept it pretty under wraps for a while. It was unclear of when they were going to do it. And then they came on Tuesday and kind of shocked a lot of people and said, okay, here it is. I was pretty surprised at how... thorough it was. I mean, I think they really hit out of the park, honestly. I was really impressed. So basically on Tuesday it launched for Facebook only, the shops. It will launch on Instagram later this summer, they said, so hopefully within a few months. And then they said they're working on WhatsApp and Messenger to launch.
Is this just in the US for now, or
it's only US?
Okay.
For now.
So just to clarify how it works. So if you have
So we have kind of a picture up here. They gave an example.
But if you have any type of e-commerce platform, let's say Shopify.
So how is Shopify involved?
Or anything like that?
Basically, it's built on top of Shopify's tech stack, but it works with other platforms. Mm-hmm. So it works with WooCommerce, BigCommerce. I think it works with Magento. Don't quote me on that, but it works with most other e-com platforms, and obviously it works with Shopify.
Right.
And so Zuckerberg and Tobi Lutke, the CEOs, both went on a live cast together and basically talked about it. We'll put the link in the show notes. I wrote about it in my newsletter because this is like the biggest news we've had in a while in e-com. Because obviously Shopify just launched their own shop.
Right. We talked about
a few weeks ago. And now this is Facebook Shops. This is a much bigger deal because basically, if you listen to this podcast, you know that we think social commerce is the future, and this is exactly it. So basically now they have one-click payments. Do you have my newsletter? Are you able to pull it up? Because I basically gave a summary of all the different features but basically it has. one-click purchasing, one-click checkout, I should say. It has lots of detailed stuff. Like they even have loyalty programs built in. They have Instagram Live and Facebook Live shopping, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah, go ahead and scroll down. Okay, so I gave the bullets right here. But basically, yeah, so one-click checkouts. So Instagram now, on the bottom where all the tabs are, there's going to be a new tab that's going to be a shop tab. And on that tab, people can go there and basically shop, and there's going to be discover sections. So if the person has bought from other brands before, it'll say like brands you might like, whatever. So they have a whole discovery section. Also, everything connects. So if you add to cart on Instagram, like this is down the road, obviously it's not launched and everything yet, but if you add to cart on Instagram and then maybe the store has a WhatsApp customer support or something, you can open WhatsApp and then ask the person on customer support some questions. And then if you're ready to check out, literally your cart is there on WhatsApp too, and you don't even have to go back to Instagram. So it's a unified checkout through all
it's a seamless
systems.
Cross-platform
promotion. And so the goal is, what I very much see happening is that obviously we've seen a lot of chat apps and chat support be much more popular, especially with SMS. And we've seen it with Facebook Messenger too. The challenge with Facebook Messenger is that, in WhatsApp, especially in the US, is it just doesn't have nearly as many users as like iMessage or anything else. I think this is a case where it may grow a lot, and that you'll see a lot of companies basically have all of their customer service within WhatsApp or something like that, and then because then they can integrate it directly with Instagram.
But I have a question myself. Obviously, we know that Shopify already integrated with Facebook and Instagram with their catalogs that you can add, and you can add to Facebook a shop tab where all the catalog of products that you sell on Shopify are there. And then with Instagram, the same thing. You can actually tag your products for purchase when you do a post. So the way that worked is that when you go to Facebook, you see the products, and then people will buy and actually check out. Basically, sends traffic back to your store, and you check out there.
So now you check out on Facebook.
So now you check out on Facebook.
And on top of that, like I said, they have storefronts now. So it's not just that you import your catalog and you can have products. Like on Instagram, you can tag products. You can have a storefront now. So basically, you can have a mini website within Instagram or within Facebook where people can check out there, and they don't have to go to your website or leave their website.
Okay.
Built-in one-click checkout. Like I said, they have live shopping, so you can do an Instagram live of a product launch or whatever, be demonstrating the product, and literally right there at the bottom, it'll say buy now, and people can click. They don't leave the live. They don't do anything. They just buy right there.
So how does that work as far as tracking sales and ownership of the customer data and all that
stuff? There's a few questions. So it's not. So one thing to clarify, because in my email I said it was free, and it is free as far as there's no fees or anything like a monthly fee, like Shopify has their monthly fee.
Right.
But they do take 5%.
Facebook does.
Yes.
For the transaction.
Yes. So part of that is transaction fees, but obviously part of that is their 5%.
They take it. Okay, so who pays that 5%? The merchant.
Yeah. So in
or is the transaction fee like equivalent to the credit card fee?
Well, it's 5%. So obviously some of that is the transaction fee based on, I don't know. I assume they probably partner with Stripe or someone. The processing fees, but obviously 5% is more than the processing fees. So that's their cut. Now, 5% is much lower than like Amazon, who takes 15, or other platforms, but they do take 5%. But so there's no other fees.
It comes to about an extra 2%, because normally the transaction fees for credit cards are between 2.5% and 3%.
Yeah, like so, Shopify, depending on
your program and your volume and all that. So if Facebook is taking 5%, they're adding another 2% on top of.
But their main goal is just make more money with ads. So they're not trying to charge 10, 15% like Amazon or other platforms would. The biggest question that I have is how much... Oh, and also to finish up, basically, there's a few other cool features. It has AR built in. So if you have anything that uses AR, just like they launched AR ads recently a few months ago, they have AR built in. So you can basically have people try on clothes, glasses, makeup, put a piece of furniture in a room, whatever you want. And then it also, one thing that I thought kind of went under the radar a little bit was they have personalized, basically they use AI to personalize the shopping experience for the customer. This is something that a lot of stores have been testing out, but the technology needed to do that is pretty advanced. Like I know Clearbit does this, and other platforms where they basically will customize the website based on data they have on the person, so they see different things.
The user experiences.
Right. And so Facebook said that, okay, well, we have tons of data on our customers. So if someone goes to your store and you sell all types of things, we're going to show them the items that we think they're most likely to buy.
So let me ask you, let me get back to my original question. I just don't know if I'm a shopper or a buyer that I'm usually going to the brand.com store and buy my products. And then I see now that I have the option to also buy through Facebook, and my storefront is the same thing. All the branding is the same. When I check out through Facebook and all this checkout that happens at Facebook, not at my store, do I have access as a store owner to the customer data?
Right. So, okay. So I wanted to finish. That's the question that I said in my email, actually. If you scroll down like 2 lines, we don't know. I don't know yet. Basically, I said the biggest unanswered question that we will find out soon is who owns the customer data and how granular. So obviously, is Facebook going to take the Amazon? I don't think they will. But the Amazon approach is like, we give you nothing. Basically, you don't get anything. We own everything. You get, if we have to, we'll give you the address to ship to them. But you don't get email addresses. You don't get any purchasing data.
Right,
nothing.
Exactly.
You don't get any lifetime value data on the customer, anything like that. Now, how much will Facebook give? I don't know. They'll definitely give more data than Amazon, I think, but I also think that there's probably privacy concerns that obviously they've had to face a lot, so I don't know how much they're going to give, but
well, I mean,
there's different levels, obviously. The basic level is like, okay, give me the customer emails and things like that. The more granular data that you get, like when you have Shopify, is like, okay, what's the purchasing history of this customer, the lifetime value of this customer, all types of things like that.
Yeah, and you see where they came from, if it was the first visit, the second visit, they came from Google, they came from social media.
So I don't know yet. They didn't make that clear. And I think that is going to be the biggest thing that makes or breaks this. Because if they are open with the data and they share that data generously, then I think that there's a very strong incentive. Like I take it from like, okay, because we're going to have to start advising our clients on this because this is a new thing. If we have our own brands, it's like, okay, do I use this? Well, if they give all the data, basically if they give all the data, I own most of the experience. I own the customer still, but I give them 5% and they don't go to my website. Maybe that's a good trade-off, right? Because my conversion rates are probably going to be much higher. It's going to be easier to acquire customers through this. Okay, maybe that's a good trade-off. But if they don't give me much customer data, maybe they give me the email, but they don't give like anything else. Well, then it's like, I don't know if I want to do that.
Well, it's the control that we always discuss. I mean, if Facebook is looking to become a kind of a diluted version of Amazon, where they say, okay, we're going to give you this marketplace, you're going to become a seller. You still fulfill your own sales and everything else. It's like a fulfilled by the seller, but instead of on Amazon, it's on Facebook. And Facebook keeps all the customer data, keeps all the transaction, keeps everything, and they just tell you, hey, this person bought this, just ship it to them. That's not a good...
If they go that route, then...
And on top of that, Facebook makes money with all the advertising too.
Right. So there's another question, though. I think if I were to guess, if I were to look like years down the road, I think that Facebook will charge more for ads if you send them to your website rather than sending them to the storefront. Just in the same way that if you run an ad right now and you link somewhere else versus if it's like an engagement ad or something like that where you're not linking somewhere else, they charge you a lot more for that, basically because the person's leaving Facebook or leaving Instagram. I think that they're going to have different ad rates for it's basically lower CPMs if you advertise to a storefront where it's contained in their ecosystem versus if you send them to your website externally. That's what I think is going to happen. We don't know. It's speculation, but that's what I think is going to happen.
So the customers that are currently using Facebook catalogs on Instagram and tagging products, will those be able to continue with that, or that will be phased out?
There's nothing that's changing. You can still advertise to your Shopify site. There's nothing changing on that.
No. I'm not talking about advertising. I'm talking about just the Facebook shop that you have now, which is basically throwing your catalog into Facebook, synchronizing with Shopify or Instagram, and then you still complete the transaction on your own website. Will that just be phased out?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, those are questions because I mean, on principle, it sounds like a great deal for the merchants to be able to. Oh my God, we're gonna have all these Facebook channels.
I didn't want to say it was a great deal. The good thing is, the thing that I'm happy about is that Amazon needs competitors as far as major
as far as Amazon is definitely.
And so I think that this has a real chance at being a real competitor. And like I said, I said. Basically, the customer data part, how much data they give to the merchants, I said, will make or break the success, in my opinion. Because if they're open with the data, if they basically build an open version of Amazon and they say, we don't care about hoarding all the customer data, we don't care about taking a huge amount of fees, we just want to make money through ads and basically build a better shopping experience, then I think that they will win. And I think that I said that if they do that, if they make it a really open, like they kind of are claiming it is, because another thing is it's an open ecosystem for apps. So just like Shopify, anybody can build apps for Facebook. No one can build apps for Amazon. There's no apps for Amazon stores, but anyone can build apps for Facebook, for anything, reviews, loyalty programs, 3PLs, all types of stuff like that. So that's cool. So if they keep it open, then I think that they can beat Amazon. Because the thing that hurts Amazon the most is that it's so closed. And they do that obviously because they can. Because they're so big and so dominant.
They're too big, right.
Right. But if they have major competitors, and then now Google is launching their own thing too, and all of a sudden you have 3 major competitors, they're going to have to fight for merchants.
Well, for one, it's going to take, obviously, some merchants from, a lot of people are leaving Amazon, specifically the bigger ones, the bigger brands. And I don't
Not just bigger brands, lots of smaller brands.
Well, smaller brands too.
We don't need, because you have to keep in mind, if you're competing on Amazon on like a product that is heavily searched for, and you're just trying to rank highly and get sales for that, that's one thing. But a lot of brands that spend a ton of money
on their own brand,
right? And then people just go to Amazon and search for them, and then Amazon gets 15% for nothing.
Yeah, it's like a branded campaign.
Right.
I mean, it's just,
why do I need Amazon then?
Right. So no, definitely this will take sellers from Amazon, but also advertising budget from Amazon in the future, because people will just say, okay, well, like you said, if my CPM is going to be lower because I have everything in the same place, I'm going to advertise on Facebook or Instagram, WhatsApp, and so forth. So that makes complete sense. It'll be interesting to see how this develops for like you said, the questions that we have as far as who owns the customer data, because to me, at the end of the day, that's the critical part.
Of course.
And if I'm giving up the 5%, which is really 2.5, depending on the credit card fees, but then more importantly, giving up my customer data and all the systems that I built within my store, whether it's Shopify or any other brand, as far as follow-up, sales flows and all that stuff, and now all that goes to Amazon, to Facebook, and I don't really know what's going on with those customers. Because when you lose control, Facebook may say tomorrow, okay, we're going to start our own Amazon thing. And then completely, we're going to start selling things. And then they cut you off. And then you basically lose control of all those sales.
Obviously, the biggest danger with all of these, at the end of the day, is you still, even if they give the customer data, they still own the relationship in a sense,
right?
And they can cut you off,
right?
And we've seen so many times. I mean, Facebook, as an advertiser, it's like a lot of times they'll just shut down your ads, shut down an ad account for no random reason, and a lot of times it's just a mistake, and they'll say, "Oh, sorry," and then
it's just an algorithm.
Then, if your store is down for 3 days because of a Facebook mistake, that sucks. You lose, and they basically. They're not going to pay you back.
Well, they've done that, and at this point, you kind of play that game knowing that the risk that you have.
Yes, you have to know the risk when you play the game. But like I said, I think the customer data is going to make or break this, and we'll see. This is going to advance more. As far as what they've built. I also want to see what major brands are going to start using
That
this.
was the key part. I was going to ask you
I don't
what
know
major
of any
brands,
major
what
brands.
major DTC brands that are already having a good customer base, owning their audience.
For example, maybe Nike, who left Amazon, will say, you know what? If you guys give us all the customer data, then we will use this. That would be huge. That would be huge, because that's an example of a major brand that was on Amazon that left for a variety of reasons.
Or even brands that are big on Amazon, like Procter & Gamble and all these other brands. They have a big presence, not just Amazon, but also Google, YouTube, all that stuff. I mean, they have huge advertising platforms there. And maybe they start shifting advertising dollars to Facebook/Instagram.
My biggest question is, will we see brands that remain exclusive use this? Because if they give all the customer data and they take 5%, but other than that, it's the same as if you sold on your own Shopify site or whatever platform you use. I think we will see brands that are exclusive and don't sell anywhere start selling on here. I do think we'll see that, which would be interesting. And that would be a big win, because then you beat Amazon by default, because you have brands that they don't. Basically.
Right. All right, so let's move on to other Shopify news. Obviously, they announced, I think that was a few days or weeks ago, the Shopify email, which is competing a little bit with the other third-party apps that they have now, like the Klaviyo's and all that stuff, where they have the email where you can create your own custom flows and everything else.
That was a while ago. That was
a while ago, but it's part of the Reunite. They announced it, but it wasn't like fully developed as far as all the features, and now they're starting to launch all the features. So that's something that has been, like you said, it's been there for a few weeks now, but it's more developed now as far as being able to develop your own campaigns.
Still not very advanced. It's fine if you're just getting started and you need some email system.
Well, it's not as advanced as third-party apps like Klaviyo is one of the major ones that people use, including ourselves. But it promises to be just as good as far as integration.
We'll
obviously.
See. Maybe. We'll see.
So, and we'll put a link so you can all determine whether that's a useful option. But I don't think Klaviyo is expensive, to be honest. So I'm not sure if it's even worth it to transfer everything to a Shopify email in the future. If you're starting, maybe you consider it, but you already have the whole Klaviyo platform set up. I don't know if it's worth it. Then we have you mentioned the bank. So they have.
Well, first they announced there's two parts. There's the financing for customers.
Right.
So lots of people use Afterpay or Klarna in Europe or Affirm.
Yeah. I think it's Shopify Pay Installments is the official name.
Yeah. So with Shop Pay, now it's built in that they have basically pay in installments versus using Affirm or Afterpay, which that's tough for those companies. I mean, now it's just built into Shopify. A lot of people use a third-party app for that, but now if it's just built in, you don't need Affirm anymore. You don't need Afterpay if Shopify just handles that for you. I don't know what's going to happen with those companies. Obviously, there's more platforms than just Shopify. But if they just lose all their Shopify merchants now, that's going to be pretty
obviously
rough.
I mean, my first thought with that was that that applies to people that have like bigger ticket items.
That's the thing. Initially, the old school, like even in retail, it's like, obviously if you go buy furniture or a TV or something like that, that's more expensive. Obviously, a lot of people want to pay in payments. But now it doesn't make a difference really for these companies if it's an installments for a $500 product or a $40 product. And even if it sounds kind of crazy, like, oh, you're going to get 4 months of payments on a $40 product. But a lot of people do it. And I've seen data that shows even on low ticket items, $30, $40, $50 products, when they offer like Afterpay and people can pay in installments,
right? And sometimes
they have a boost in conversion rate. And it's like, it's just an option to throw in there.
And sometimes they have this first 6 months free financing stuff, and then, if you don't pay, they charge you the whole thing at once. But it's another option. It's just another hook to make you actually
it's just another
make that
feature.
decision.
But it's a feature that used to be an app that's now built in. So we'll see what happens with all those companies.
And then the famous balance debit card that they have too. Yeah. So now that works with your merchant profits, or is it just like a debit card? I thought I read somewhere that debit card is actually, you cannot add money to it, that it works with your the proceeds from your sales. Is that something that you?
I don't know. Is that true?
That's what I read originally. That you cannot just add money to your debit card to have more debit or more credit.
I'm not sure. I just know they launched a checking account, and basically they said you get a card, has cash back, your typical stuff when you see. But basically, it's a business checking account by Shopify, and they said we're gonna give a suite of tools that most small businesses don't have access to.
And they said no minimum fees, no minimum balances, and all that stuff, and no fees or nothing. But I think I read something that you cannot add money to it, but you feed it with money from your sales, and basically you have a balance based on your sales, and you can just keep it there for other expenses.
Might be useful.
So yeah. So anything else that from the?
Yeah, there were smaller things. One cool thing was they now offer local delivery.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Basically, they built in a technology so that people can do local delivery. So if you have customers, basically you can go into your shipping settings, and if you want to offer local delivery, if you say you can set it for like a 15-mile radius of your zip code or something like that, and then if people who check out within 15 miles of your zip code, obviously it depends where you live. If you live in like New York, where you have a lot of people, it's very dense, you could have a lot of customers in that area. And then what it'll do is if you have, let's say, like 5 orders that day in your local area, then it'll set a route automatically, the most efficient route on the map. And then someone can go and you can have your delivery driver go and give it to all those people.
So the company delivers as a driver that does the route to deliver.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost like an Uber routing. If you've ever seen the Uber drivers app for delivering products, basically. It's pretty cool, actually.
So, but it's not based on a third-party delivery system like you're talking Uber.
No, it's
the company basically has their own delivery.
Built-in.
Yeah, so it's good because now they have local pickup, which they added a while ago.
Pickup,
and you can just set up locations where your physical stores are or places where you can pick up the order.
Right. Obviously, they're pushing these features forward that maybe would have come out later to right now because everybody is getting things delivered or doing curbside pickup because of the coronavirus. And so that's why they push things forward. Obviously, that doesn't apply to most e-com companies because most e-com companies don't sell their local people unless it's by chance, basically. But it depends on your business. It's just another cool feature that they added, basically.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, also important, so far, all of these features, as far as we know for now, they're only available in the U.S. or will be soon in the U.S. And then the goal is to expand.
The delivery and pickup, I believe, is U.S. and Canada.
Okay, yeah, U.S. and Canada, but North America for the most part. And then in other countries, like European countries, they may or may not implement it right away. I mean, all the news releases and press releases say that will be soon anywhere or everywhere. Obviously, we don't know when that will happen. So obviously, we have a few customers that are in European countries, which get very excited,
tough,
and then
global is tough. It's just
you
anybody
have a lot
who's tried selling internationally, it's like every country has their own rules, their own tariffs, their own import taxes, and
their own delivery rules as far as shipping and all that. So
it's
rates.
Complicated, man.
It's tough. The logistics part is very complicated.
It's tough. So that's why it's ideally, I'll sell anywhere in the world.
Even payment methods. I mean, I get questions all the time from people in Europe saying, "Hey, we use here PayPal is very common, but even each country has their own thing, like Bizum and some other places where you connect with your bank account and it's like a Apple Pay type thing." I mean, they have all types of payment methods, and it says, "Well, when is Shopify gonna do that? Because my customers always use that, and it's like transferring money locally and all that."
Like I understand. Like when you're trying to sell in South America or in Southeast Asia, that all these countries have different rules and stuff. But you'd think that in Europe, at least within EU countries, they'd have some type of unification. But they really don't. Selling in the UK, well, I know UK is different now, but selling in Germany versus France versus Spain versus, it's a whole messy process.
Well, you have to apply for the VAT or the value-added tax number, which is their
but then even each country
consumption
has their
tax.
own import laws, rules, and you have to fill this paperwork. It's just, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, it's a lot of paperwork.
Global commerce, I think, when you talk about areas that still are ripe for innovation, I think global commerce is a huge one. There's so much more that needs to be done on global commerce.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to get any better now, especially with all these...
Yeah, I don't think so either.
With all these crises and stuff, so... All right, so
the other final note that they did was on the Shopify Fulfillment Network, which they actually announced last year at Shopify Unite. It was invite-only beta. And now it's open to everyone. So any Shopify merchant can now use the Shopify Fulfillment network.
So refresh my memory on that. How does that work? The fulfillment obviously is the...
it's very similar to Amazon FBA, if anyone's ever used that.
Right.
But basically, or any other 3PL.
But where are their warehouses? Where are their...
They have a map. But they partner with they have some warehouses that are their own, and they have some that they partner with 3PLs. And basically, if you ever use 3PL or Amazon FBA, you ship all your stuff there. They charge you.
Are their fees similar to Amazon, or they're going to be cheaper?
It depends. I've seen different fee tables. Some cases it can be cheaper. In other cases, it can be much more expensive. If you have a product, so where it seems to be much cheaper is if you have a product that people buy a lot, multiple of, instead of just buying one-offs, it's much cheaper because Amazon FBA, for example, charges per unit. So if someone orders 5 and you have a $4 per unit fee, they'll charge you $20. Shopify does per order. And so if someone orders 5 units, then you still only pay that $5 fee or whatever they charge you. So if you have a product that you sell multiple, people normally buy multiple, Shopify is actually very affordable. But if it's one-offs, it doesn't seem to be that much.
All right, so that's a lot of things for Shopify just this week, actually. So we'll definitely add a link in our show notes to all these features where you can read more if you're interested. This email, actually, you're not subscribed to it, is very informative. It's what is the subscription link?
mgredge.com/join.
Yeah, that comes once a week on Tuesdays usually, and it's very short. I mean, you can see the whole email here. It's usually 1 or 2 stories, specifically on e-commerce, obviously, and then a few other important news, and that's all you get. So it's really a quick read if you want to be in the know of what's happening and you don't have to browse through 20 different websites to find the news. We do that for you.
I spend many hours a week reading e-com news and other people's thoughts. And I compile it in a 5-minute read.
Yeah, definitely.
Not even 5 minutes.
We curate. I say, we don't invent anything. All we do there is maybe we put a couple lines of
I normally
opinion,
do my own write-up, and then I have links at the bottom.
Right. So it's definitely a very, I actually, I deal with other divisions of MGR as the agency, and David is all e-commerce, and I actually read it myself. Because as you can see, he's doing most of the talking today, and when it comes to e-commerce and new trends, I'm usually catching up more than being on the forefront like he is. So, which leads me to the next topic.
You want to talk about the $100 million man?
Yeah, Spotify, the other FI company.
I'm sure everybody's heard about this by now.
That's actually bigger news than anything I've heard in a long time.
To back up for 2 seconds, we're talking about Joe Rogan. He signed an exclusive deal with Spotify. Terms are not announced, multi-year. They didn't say exactly. I've heard it's 4, I've heard it's 5. Nobody really knows 100%.
I heard 5 too, yeah.
I heard, so first it was, nobody knew the numbers. And then Wall Street Journal reported it's $100 million a year.
People will guess him anywhere between 50 and 75.
I guess.
Based on what they estimate is the current revenue that he gets from the podcast.
If you remember on this podcast a few months ago, I guessed that he was making $50 million a year.
Right.
And so if he was making $50 million a year to be exclusive to Spotify, it kind of makes sense. Maybe they basically said, okay, we'll double it, and then you're exclusive. I heard a number today that someone said it might even be $125 million a year. So who knows?
Yeah.
Point is, they threw the bag at him.
Well, but he is
rolling in money.
But let's remember that Spotify just also bought out completely, or basically acquired The Ringer, which is pretty much
Spotify's doing a lot. To recap real quick,
so The Ringer was 250,
as far 200, I think.
Okay, 200 or 250. I heard both figures too.
I'm not sure. So they bought, basically, backtrack, they bought Gimlet Media, which is another podcast network and specifically a podcast production company. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of very high quality, high production value podcasts. So they don't do a lot of like this, like where we give no effort. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Basically, two dudes in a microphone.
Yeah.
Or Joe Rogan, same thing. 2 dudes in a microphone. They do like editing, very high production, almost like it's an audio like series.
It's almost like a formerly type of radio show with fully elaborated and
like they do like a true crime series that is like it's almost like a documentary, but you listen to it. So that type of thing. They have a few big podcasts. The biggest I think is called Reply All. It's a tech podcast, and they have some crime podcasts. But they bought it for the network and they have a production studio and everything. So they basically bought that. That was last year. That was, I think it was 200 something million as well. Don't quote me on that. It was in the hundreds of millions. I don't remember the exact number. They bought Anchor, which was the podcasting creation app that you can use your phone to make a podcast. And then they bought The Ringer. That was back in January for 250 million. So that obviously means they got Bill Simmons and the whole Ringer podcast network.
Yeah, network, yeah. Which is like probably 25, 30 different podcasts.
Yeah. And so they did that. And now they also this one went kind of under the radar. They signed an exclusivity deal with the Obamas production company. So it looks like both Michelle and Barack Obama are going to have an exclusive podcast on Spotify as well. I don't know much details about that. No idea about numbers or anything, but that happened too. And now obviously the biggest of them all was they have this huge deal with Rogan.
Which is the interesting thing is that...
So they've been doing a lot basically.
But when you go... It's funny because... Joe Rogan was not on Spotify at all. He
wasn't.
When you listen to a podcast, you can obviously it's a feed, it's an RSS feed, and then you can decide which platform you prefer. So some people use Apple Podcast, which is not a good one, and then you have Overcast, you have different ones.
Well, Apple Podcast is by far the biggest, but kind of by default.
Right.
Not because it's a great platform.
No, but Apple really neglected the podcast feature. It's just basically a feed and you get it. And they still do, which is basically amazing. But that comes back to Steve Jobs when he said, okay, we provide Apple Music and Apple Podcasts, which is weird because that name podcast came from the iPod. And anyways, that's a whole different story. But you choose where to have your podcast, but because Spotify inserts ads for non-subscribers when you're listening to music and all that, and many people that use Spotify but they don't subscribe to it, they have commercials. So Rogan had his own sponsors and advertisers. Therefore, he said, I don't want to be there and you guys insert other commercials that are not my sponsors. So he was not on the platform. So you wanted to listen to Joe Rogan, you had to go to Apple or any other sources, and he was never there, he's the largest podcaster as far as I know.
It's either him. As far as individual podcasters, he's number one. I think New York Times, The Daily, maybe up there, and there's another one, This American Life. But basically, he's one of the biggest podcasts in the world.
Yeah, and he has this...
He's the biggest personality, for sure.
For sure. And he has this known long format podcast where it's basically sometimes 2.5, 3 hour conversation, unplugged, pretty much like we are here, like no holds barred. He has famous guests. He has like Elon Musk. He's had a lot of different people that are...
So let me ask you, one thing that a lot of people are worried about is potential censorship.
Well, obviously
he has a lot of controversial guests on, and that's kind of what really makes him...
He had Alex Jones. He had...
Yes.
He's had a lot of controversial guests.
He had the Bob Lazar aliens guy. Lots of people who... I mean, Rogan is very famous for like no censorship at all. He's not afraid to have any guest on. He'll have a conversation with anyone.
Right. I don't think...
Do you think that will change? Well, I don't think so. I think for him...
No.
I'm sure if he would not have done that deal, if he
he said it. He said it. Nothing is changing.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I know he's going to say
Well, I know, but I don't think he'll change the feature that made him who he is.
Right.
So now the question I have is... I mean, that didn't change him either when he was on YouTube or he is on YouTube with his podcast. Everything. Every one of them is also on YouTube. It used to be live, and then they decided not to do it live, and they do it, they upload it, but it's a 3-hour YouTube podcast, and you watch the video version many times, and then they have multiple clips and segments that are also part of the algorithm on YouTube
when
you're searching for topics.
He said that about half of his audience is YouTube, half listens.
Right. So... To answer your question, I don't think it's going to change anything. I mean, knowing Joe Rogan, I don't know.
I don't think he would have signed the deal if he didn't have 100% creative control.
And he was very clear about that. Now, my only question is something that I've also heard since it happened, that, when you are on Spotify, then you're on this kind of platform, because before he was on his own studio and everything else, and he'll continue doing that. Now he belongs to a platform where he has an exclusivity contract, and that contract will be really exclusive starting at the end of the year or the next year, when the video component and everything will be on Spotify. So when you do that...
to clarify that, a lot of people were confused. Spotify is launching video too. We actually discussed this previously. A lot of people were like, well, what does he mean the videos can be on Spotify?
Yeah.
Spotify is launching video too.
Their own streaming video format option for podcasts that are so far. I mean, they had little snippets for the music.
Right.
Music.
But it'll be like, basically the video you see on YouTube of Rogan will be on Spotify.
And I believe the contract for Spotify with Joe Rogan means that the whole podcast will be only on Spotify, but the little clips,
the clips will still
continue to be on YouTube. So if you are listening to a long format podcast that he does with 2.5 or 3 hour interview with somebody, usually he has like, I don't know, 6 to 8 clips with sections of the podcast. Those will continue to be on YouTube. The whole length of the podcast will be only on Spotify, so you won't be able to find it. But the censorship thing, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I think many some companies, like, I don't know if they haven't done it so far as I know. That some companies will say, hey, we don't want to be on YouTube. Because
but Spotify makes money with advertisers. And what if advertisers say, hey, we don't want to put our ad on a podcast with Alex Jones?
Right.
And which many would do. Okay, but doesn't Spotify say, hey, don't have Alex Jones on?
No, they will say, okay, we'll put your ads anywhere else, but not with the Joe Rogan podcast. Because, I mean, Joe Rogan still has his own advertisers, which is basically how
but now those are all Spotify. Spotify now basically...
Yeah, we don't know exactly the details of the transaction, how they divvy up or how the advertising money from the Joe Rogan show will go. Maybe...
I'm going to assume they own
I'm assuming they're all there, obviously. But Spotify will say, hey, now we have this huge podcast that is downloaded billions of times by everybody worldwide, basically. And if you don't want to be part of the advertising because the guest is controversial, fine, we'll leave you out. I think that will be...
Right. But the Spotify business side is going to say, hey, we can't sell ads on a show that's controversial like this, so don't have those controversial guests on.
Yeah, but why didn't it happen on the same advertisers on YouTube? Or
because Joe has his own relationships with those advertisers. But there's a lot of advertisers who don't advertise on Joe Rogan's platform, on podcast.
No, I understand that. But when the advertising...
Because Spotify, keep in mind, they're trying to make big brand partnerships.
Sure.
So if they make a partnership with Coca-Cola and they say, okay, you're going to be on all of these different podcasts and blah, 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 blah. And then they end up with a Coca-Cola ad on some super controversial podcast. Are they going to be upset about that? I'm sure they would.
Well, but
these brands are very particular.
No,
about
they are, of
show
course.
up.
But what you have to think about what Spotify is looking. I mean, first of all, Spotify wants to become the biggest audio platform. They want to become the audio version of YouTube, and now they're even, as we said, taking over YouTube's or getting into YouTube's territory with videos as well. So what they're trying to do is get people that were not subscribed and getting your Joe Rogan for free anywhere else. Now they're going to have to maybe say, okay, now I'm going to subscribe because I want to have Joe Rogan uninterrupted, with no breaks or whatever. So they will get many more subscribers or listeners or anything, which allows Spotify to upsell and sell much more advertising. Will there be controversy down the road? Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised they did it this way. I would say probably that, another format that people were thinking of is saying, okay, we'll give you the first half an hour of the interview free, and then you want to listen to it now? Okay, now you need to subscribe, things like that. But
no, because one of the parts that Rogan said, it's still free for everyone.
Right. So... obviously, it's not our call to decide, whether the terms is good or not. I mean, the bottom line is that he is the biggest podcaster right now as far as personality, and he's not going to be exclusively on Spotify. I don't think it's going to change his podcast. I mean, it's a 4 or 5 year contract, which is a long contract too. And then I don't think he's going to change. He has a lot of podcasts too. I mean, he does
they own the whole archive too. That was part of the deal.
Right, the whole library, correct. So, which is good because, like I said, he was not on Spotify before. So now they're going to go back to 1800. I don't know how many he has. He's been around for 10 years or so.
Yeah.
I think he's on almost 2,000 episodes by now.
I don't know how many. I know it's over 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I see the little thumbnails on YouTube when it's like 1,700
no, I mean,
or something.
He's been doing it for over 10 years.
He does easily 2-3 per week, and of course he has other gigs going on with the UFC and his own stand-up comedy comedy stores and things like that. So that's a big deal. So, but on the Spotify, on the business side, they are like just acquiring, and this is for a company that actually is not really cash flow positive yet, as far as subscribers.
Yeah, but they have a ton of funding.
Yeah, but again, it's no growth at all costs, like we were discussing before. So at some point,
but in their case, they need to, because they lose money with the music.
Right.
They basically, but the difference is that Spotify has a ton of revenue, and so they have a ton of paying users. I mean, they have 120, I think it was 124 million was their most recently reported number of paying users. And so they have a huge customer base. They just need to monetize them better. And the music, they just have to pay so much in royalties that it's not profitable for them. Like, I looked at their numbers. Last year they did 6.7 billion in revenue, but they had to pay out like 5 billion to music companies, basically.
Right. But that's the thing. Do you think Spotify is moving forward to towards more the podcast and user-generated content, I think, than the music?
No, they're still going to have music. Music is like the anchor. That's what brings people to the app. That's why they have so many users. But it's like the famous Big Mac analogy that we've used on this podcast so many times. Yeah. You bring people in with the $1 burger, and then you make money with the fries, the shake, the soda, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's what Spotify is doing. Spotify has all these users for the music, but now they want to make money with the podcast because the podcast is much more profitable.
I'll be curious to see the amount of listeners after a while, after this is over. But how much will it be the split between music listeners versus podcast listeners? And I think now with a Joe Rogan, not so far right away because the contract is in stages. But
I don't know the answer.
6 months from now, if just Joe Rogan alone is going to get, and the Ringer and all that stuff, they're going to get, the Ringer is not exclusive. So
yeah,
that's
the interesting thing about the Ringer is they're not exclusive. I wonder if they will make them eventually.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because they actually just acquired them, but they didn't say you're going to, I still listen to many
podcasts that are exclusive. Right. Like the big ones, like Bill Simmons' podcast, he's not exclusive. Mm-hmm. We'll see if they make it exclusive or not. They also want to do more video for the Ringer too, because the Ringer does a lot of video.
Yes, they do.
And they said that once their video platform is launched, that they're going to start doing video for the Ringer too. So we'll see. Spotify, I think, as of the most recent numbers, they are about 15% of all podcasts. Their market share basically is about 15%. This will definitely give them a boost. You have to make smart acquisitions, because Joe Rogan has the pull to bring a huge amount of audience to Spotify.
This is similar.
A lot of other people don't have that pull. And so that's why I think they're being very strategic. I think the Ringer has a pull. I think Bill Simmons himself has a lot of pull. Like, people who listen to Bill Simmons' podcast are going to listen to him, even if he's only on Spotify. Yeah. And the same is true for Rogan. Finding those creators with pull is the big question. And I think this is going to hurt YouTube a lot too, because he was the number one.
It will. Yeah, definitely.
He was the number one podcast on YouTube. And, I was thinking the other day, I was like, if someone built a video platform and they went to like the top YouTubers, top 4-5 YouTubers, and they went to PewDiePie and David Dobrik and Shane Dawson, I don't know, basically a few of the biggest YouTubers, and they basically gave him a bunch of money and gave him equity and said, we're going to launch a YouTube competitor. And all those guys moved and became exclusive to whatever, David Tube.
Yeah.
I think that platform would have a real chance.
Right.
A real chance at taking on YouTube, because YouTube is very much almost like an Amazon, where they have such a monopoly that they get away with so many issues that they have.
Yeah.
From censorship, copyright issues isn't even like, it's unbelievable.
But there's other platforms that are like Vimeo and all that stuff.
Yeah, but those guys. No, it would have to be a platform that basically is identical to YouTube in terms of user-generated videos and has a lot of the same bells and whistles. Yeah. And then they just basically got a bunch of the top YouTubers who have real pull. Because if you pull David Dobrik off of YouTube and put him on another platform, his fans will follow.
Well, why don't those guys just create their own platform themselves?
Because it's been done before. The problem is it's been tried before.
If you become so big that you can basically develop your own brand or personality, then why don't you just... I mean, obviously, streaming is very expensive, and that's why one of the things that you start having your own streaming video server, that's very pricey.
They first of all, you need to get a bunch of YouTubers together to agree to do it. One person isn't going to make the difference. You need to have like multiple heavy hitters, and then you also would need tons of funding. You need a company and operators, because these guys are YouTubers. They're not going to run the company. They don't know how to run a tech company.
Right.
So they need operators who are going to. So it's not that easy.
Right.
But I think there's a real chance that someone could do it. I think that there's never been a better chance than right now, because you've seen the success of Spotify doing it in podcasts.
Yeah.
I think someone could do it in video.
I mean, I've been using Spotify, I don't know, for a long, long time, and I started with music like everybody else, and now I realize that I'm using Spotify more for podcasting.
See, that's the thing. I don't listen to any podcasts on Spotify.
You don't? What platform do you use?
Apple Podcasts, or I use Overcast.
Okay. I use Apple mostly, and then when I use Spotify, well, the thing for me is that
I like Joe Rogan, so now
I'll tell you one thing.
Have to listen.
You know why I started switching to Spotify for the podcast too? Because with the Spotify app on my iPhone, I can also listen through Alexa or other speakers when I'm driving, when I'm anywhere in the house or whatever. Well, Apple will not connect. So that's one of the handicaps for me. When I want to listen to a podcast and I just basically say I want to listen without my AirPods, or I'm just doing something and I just on a speaker or something, then with the Spotify app, I can connect it and then I'm listening to it while I'm working on my car, on a speaker or driving or whatever. And I cannot do that with the Apple Podcast. That's what made me kind of duplicate all my podcast feed on Spotify and start listening to them there. So that's one of the key things that that's what I'm saying, that before I used to listen to music a lot, and now I kind of I'm 50-50. I'm a listener of Joe Rogan, most of his podcasts, not all of them obviously, but I think that's going to bring a lot of streaming minutes to Spotify.
Of course it will.
It's going to be huge.
Of course it will.
Especially because he came from zero. It's not like he was there already and he was elsewhere and now it's going to be there only. No, it's that he wasn't there at all.
Right.
And now you bring the billions of hours of podcasting.
He's going to bring... the second he becomes exclusive,
right,
he's going to bring... Obviously, the question is how many people will go there. I think Joe Rogan fans are going to follow.
Oh,
I think,
absolutely.
So he's going to instantly bring, 2-3 million minimum people to the platform, if not more.
Yeah.
So that's the value.
Right.
That's the value. But we'll see. Very interesting.
All right. Another topic: delivery, food delivery.
Yeah, you wanted to talk about
this.
I
wanted to talk about that because it's interesting. You actually have been more active with the food delivery than I have been during this pandemic time of restaurants closed and everything else. And it's interesting how now the food delivery companies or delivery companies that we had before, like it was Uber Eats and Postmates, which we know as well, then GrubHub. Which one is the other one?
DoorDash.
Right. So it's interesting. I had another graphic here of how they're now all of a sudden becoming like indispensable, like really crucial for all these restaurants that are trying to survive with the curbside pickups and all that stuff, and try basically to keep their customers with their food while they're staying at home. Shelter in place, has brought all these restaurants to deliver home, and we discussed the restaurants to death in the last couple of episodes. So, but now comes to what we call the last mile of food delivery, which is basically taking the food from the restaurant to the consumer. And so how do you think that thing is developing, or which companies are going to make it without losing money with every delivery? Because at the end of the day, you have a delivery that costs money, whether it's $3, $4 or $5 per delivery, and somebody's paying for that. Either the consumer pays when they add that money or that fee to their food, or the restaurant says, hey, we offer free delivery, and they absorb the cost of delivering the food, or the company, the GrubHubs and the Uber Eats and all that stuff have a special deal where they undercharge so they kind of keep themselves busy. So I think it's interesting how it's working and how it varies from city to city, which one is more relevant or more dominating in the market. But what's your take on all those on all these companies?
Well, it's interesting because every company is in a different position, whether it's Uber Eats, DoorDash, GrubHub, Postmates. GrubHub of all of them is the only one that actually is profitable. They're cash flow positive. They're not basically burning cash. DoorDash, Postmates.
And why is that? Is that the rates are higher, or just that they have a more efficient operation, or
a lot of various reasons?
Because I would imagine the rates are very similar between them.
They're very similar, but GrubHub has a different approach, and GrubHub doesn't basically grow at all costs. GrubHub obviously is growing, and they're trying to grow, but they're not the growth at all costs. We're going to burn all the cash. They also have better partnerships with restaurants too, and they're a public company, which helps. When you're a public company, you have to become profitable or you're going to go out very quickly. The other ones, Uber's public, but they don't even release numbers on Uber Eats. They release some very vague numbers, but they don't release accurate numbers. And then obviously DoorDash and Postmates are not. At some point, they're just going to have to raise prices. Like, you can't, if you're DoorDash and if you're DoorDash or Postmates or whoever, and you're charging $4 a delivery and it's costing you $5, you're gonna have to raise prices eventually.
So I'm not very familiar with the rates that they charge, but what is the average rate if you order from a local restaurant that you used to go within a 2, 3, 4 mile radius, and now you say, hey, I'm gonna have the food delivered to me, and one of these companies is bringing you the food? What's the average charge for them?
It depends. Anywhere from $3 to $5-6 normally. Okay,
so that's number one, and then the second question is, right now, obviously who's paying for those fees? Sometimes it's the customer.
Right, it's the customer. So you pay whatever. You go to the DoorDash app and you buy something that's whatever $15, and then you pay a $5 fee on top of that to get it delivered.
So let's say I know you order from Chipotle, you like, and all that stuff.
Well, Chipotle's different because they partner with DoorDash, but Chipotle offers very discounted rates. I don't know in that situation. I'm assuming it's Chipotle eating the costs because Chipotle was doing free delivery for a while.
Right. So that's the thing. Yeah.
But that's different than if you just go to a regular restaurant. They don't eat those costs like that. But yeah, it's normally, if you go to DoorDash and they charge, the thing is that even when they have their normal rates, they give so many discounts and promotions constantly to buy stuff that it's you never actually are paying the real rates. I don't go a week without DoorDash or Postmates sending me something saying, hey, here's a $50 credit. Here's a $100 credit, whatever.
Yeah, Uber does the same thing.
So it's I'm never really paying the real price, basically. They actually build bad consumer habits because now that I know that I'm always going to get some discount, it's I don't order delivery unless I have some credits or discounts or something.
Right, that's what they work. So this graphic here, for those who actually are watching the video, it has all major cities: New York, LA, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Washington, Miami, Phoenix, Boston, San Francisco, and so forth, and the split between the 4 major food delivery companies. And it's interesting because, you see, for example, in New York, GrubHub is huge.
Well, that's because you have to understand, GrubHub, I believe, started in New York.
Right.
DoorDash is the biggest in San Francisco. DoorDash started in San Francisco.
Right. And then you have Uber Eats is huge in Miami. They dominate about 60% of the market there. And however, GrubHub in Miami is only 7%. So it's not like you see when you look at the graphic,
DoorDash is the biggest.
DoorDash, obviously you see majority orange, which is DoorDash. And then it looks like the red is also, maybe it's because of the color, but it looks like the red is pretty big too, which is Uber Eats. Postmates looks pretty small, except in LA, where they have about 34% of the food delivery business. They're pretty small in any other major city. 5%, less than 5%, 6%. Phoenix, which is what you like, is 17%. So I don't know. What do you think about the... the fuck?
Why do you need a signature for this?
I don't know. You sign?
No.
What's
your name?
What is it?
It's something I bought the other day, but I don't understand.
Oh, the fuck. Oh, let's just finish this thing. I'm just fucking tired of all these interruptions. I know it's not your fault. They just want to, let's put it there as...
I've never seen on a fucking, it's a pair of shorts. A signature on a pair of shorts.
It's like, boom, 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 boom. It's like, fuck, people.
I know, but I've never seen signature.
I don't even know what I was doing.
You were saying Postmates and comparing the cities, basically.
Yeah, so do I need to continue or you continue? I can go back and say...
I'll go, so then it sounds like you can cut it and it'll sound like I jumped in. Yeah, I mean, obviously, each one has different dominance in different markets. But, yeah, at some point there's going to have to be a consolidation because either a consolidation or they all just raise prices. But, I mean, they
can't... Well, but that was the point. If they raise prices, who's paying for those? The consumer?
Well, the consumer.
The consumer will stop ordering then. And then the restaurant, right. They're already dire straits as far as I know.
No, the restaurant, it's going to be the consumer. Because right now, the delivery companies are eating the cost because they have a ton of VC money. Fine, whatever. The restaurants cannot. The restaurants often already are losing money on deliveries because these guys take 15%, 10%, depending on their arrangement with the companies of the total price. So the restaurants can't afford that either. So It's going to have to be the consumer.
Well, but the consumer is used to having free shipping, free everything. They order something, they pay for the goods, they pay for whatever, but they're used to the free shipping.
It's not going to happen.
And free delivery of whatever. And now they're going to have to pay for the food. And what's going to happen is that they're going to end up ordering the food from whichever restaurant or service provides the biggest deal. So if I need to order, I mean, I don't know how big is the food ticket, but if you're ordering something that is like $20 and then you have like 7 or 8 in delivery, that's almost a 50% markup just to have it shipped.
That's why I think that. So I think personally that the food delivery business, it's not just me, lots of people think this, it's just a bad business.
I know. That was the point business. Of all this. It's bad, and then you have 4 major companies
I think the way that these companies, and I think Postmates is the one that's moving most on this. Uber is a bit too. And DoorDash, they've talked about it. I haven't seen them actively do much of it, but I think that these companies should use the food delivery as a customer acquisition and a driver acquisition method, and try to burn as little cash as possible while doing it, and then make money basically doing last mile logistics for a lot of other things.
Right.
Because and I think food has very low margins. But if they start doing last mile logistics for things with high margins, if they're delivering clothing, which they've started doing.
They're delivering drugs sometimes.
They're delivering drugs.
Things that
have much more margin. Then they can make money. Mm-hmm. And so I think that this needs to be a loss leader for them, but that they need to make money with all these other things. Because last mile logistics is very valuable. But everybody thinks of last mile logistics in terms of food. But there's so many other things it can be used for. And so many other things that are much more profitable than food. And that's where I think, I don't know. I think at some point, if I were to guess, I would say, if I had to guess, one of these disappears. Probably Postmates.
Well, based on the numbers, that's what it looks like.
Because there was a rumor for a while that Postmates and DoorDash might merge.
Right.
And that doesn't look like it's going to happen because DoorDash basically says, why?
I don't know. I mean, in the case of the restaurants, if I own a restaurant that is pretty famous, have a normal customer base, and now they're ordering more from home, as it looks like is the trend, I would just have a guy, a driver that is employed by the restaurant.
Yeah.
That can do everything.
Can afford it, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I cannot afford is losing customers or absorbing the cost of shipping or delivering the food, which is $6 to $8.
The other thing too is there's other companies that are coming up too that have better solutions that are doing distributed instead of centralized, because these are all centralized.
Right.
There's other companies that are offering distributed, and I think that may be the real.
And then you have the packaged food deals that we discussed last time too, where you can buy food that is meals ready to eat type thing, gourmet meals, and then those come shipped and everything. They offer free shipping, and then you don't order from a restaurant, you order from a company that has those options.
I think the roadmap for especially like DoorDash and Postmates is to find other high margin businesses and use this as a loss leader and basically at least get to break even. I mean, that's what they need to do right now, so they're not burning cash. At least get to break even. Because if they can do that and they use this as a loss leader, but then they make a ton of money being the last mile logistics company that tons of businesses use, then that's valuable. But we'll see. I mean, obviously these companies, listen, they have plenty of smart people who work there. I'm sure they think about this every single day. But yeah, at some point, you have to make money. It's like everything. You can't lose money forever.
Right.
And they're huge. These companies are huge now. So this excuse of growing is no longer valid. Like DoorDash and Postmates, they're fucking huge now.
It just gets to a point where you almost don't want to grow at this with this structure. You're a company normally. You get an order. It's like, oh yeah, I got an order or something. You get excited. But if you are losing with every order,
right.
It's like your incentive is not there.
I don't know how many deliveries they do a day, but I would guess that DoorDash does tens of thousands a day.
Yeah, especially these days.
Enough. You're big enough now where your growth at all costs is no longer the answer. Especially when you look at the orange, you have a huge market share.
Right.
You need to start making money.
This is all major cities with tons of restaurants that are trying to survive.
There's not that much more. I don't think that there's that much more growth to have. I don't think that food delivery in the next 2 years is going to double again. Okay, so they're reaching the saturation point of the market, and now they need to learn how to make money, and that's a big transition.
And this, hopefully, when sheltering places and all that phases of the confinement happen, people will start going to restaurants, not massively flowing to restaurants, but they're going to start going back to, stop ordering food from home and then going to restaurants, which means that those numbers will decrease as far as volume, maybe no percentages. So, all right, David, I think that's everything that we have today. Anything that you'd like to add on your own? Any other news that we missed?
No, I think we're good for now. If Spotify wants to talk to us, exclusivity deal.
We'll take about a tenth of the a hundredth of the revenue from Joe Rogan.
I'm not cheap. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not cheap. You're gonna have to give me a very nice deal.
Okay.
Well, the funny thing is to put one last.
Well, you know what? It's true that they actually do acquire also a smaller niche podcast.
No, I know they do.
So it's not just the big ones are the ones that make the news, but there's a lot of little acquisitions that are there in between. So there's hope.
But Johnny's little podcast is not getting $100 million check.
No, that's for sure. Yeah.
No, but you know what is true? That people look at these big numbers. The thing that Rogan has never done, and it's fine because he said that he's just not interested in that, is create his own brands.
Right.
If he created his own brands, that $100 million would look like fucking nothing. Joe Rogan could do easily $100 million a year in revenue if he created his own brands.
Yeah.
That was my
I
last.
think he's spread already now.
And that was one thing I actually didn't mention. I don't know with this agreement if Shopify owns all the merchandising and brand part of it, because if they do, then this is gonna be super lucrative. Because if I'm Spotify, I'm like, all right, we're making the Joe Rogan. It's not gonna call it Joe Rogan brand, but I'm gonna make brands around Joe Rogan and have them advertise on the podcast.
Yeah, we'll see.
Trust me,
because it's a limited time deal. I mean, 4 or 5 years. So I'm not sure what happens to that after it's over or what happens. So, anyways, that time will tell. That's all we have for today. For everybody listening, thank you for listening or watching. And you can catch this podcast on mgrunplugged.com or mgredge.com. And then follow the company at mgragency.com. Those are our major websites and outlets. For everybody else, we'll be here back next week. And until then, stay safe and have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye.